Welcome to the Let's Eat Grandma Career Warrior Podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 47th episode of the Let's Eat Grandma Career Warrior Podcast, where our goal is not only to help you land your dream job, but to help you live your best life. Today, we have the quintessential Career Warrior episode. We are going to assist you on your journey to being a better professional by discussing how you can do more in less time. Because time really is the most valuable resource you have. And us warriors are all about being smarter in the way that we do things. Perhaps you're like me. You're always saying the statement, I don't have time, and are using it as an excuse as to why you haven't grown your business as much as you wish, or have gotten that promotion, or you haven't quit that job you hate. Yes, time seems to be the ultimate constraint, even more than money in many of our cases. It's one of my favorite topics, and this episode just excites me so much. I brought on Dan LeFave, a no-excuse prepare for success coach and mindset engineer. How about that for a title? Since 2012, he's helped professionals cut time in half to boost workplace productivity. Dan has been featured in national publications, including Business Magazine and Success Profiles Magazine. And a fun fact to hammer home the networking theme on this podcast, Dan and I actually started our business relationship on LinkedIn. And you can actually follow him on LinkedIn, and he's Dan LeFave. All right, so let's talk time and let's make your life even more fulfilling with our 47th episode of the Career Warrior Podcast. All right, Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm excellent, Chris. Thanks for having me.
It's fantastic to have you on here. I was just impressed with your profile and all the things that you've done, and I wanted to kind of hear from you how you got started with career coaching and working with entrepreneurs and all sorts of professionals.
Well, it's I think it started about 25 years ago, and I was studying books like Wayne Dyer, but that was sort of the catalyst. And unfortunately, I was able to meet Wayne Dyer twice before he passed a few years ago. But that was the catalyst. But the real trigger happened within the past 10 years, and the initiator of that was me being dissatisfied. you know how that happens when you're
sure.
You're not feeling at home in your own body. I was in a corporate job. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I was senior manager. I mean, they're paying me well. I mean, in Canada, they call it the sunshine zone, I think, or something like that, where you make it over $100,000. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, it doesn't seem so great, but it's okay. I can survive.
The sunshine zone. I really like that. I don't know why.
Yeah. So, their sunshine list or whatever, but they actually publish it. So it's kind of interesting if you get on the list. It's not maybe the greatest thing, but so here's the thing. I mean, I was doing fairly well. My wife could stay home, and we had a child. We had another one on the way, and she was developing her own practice and business. The thing was, I was pretty dissatisfied in what I was doing because it wasn't challenging me, and I only came to that realization because the company I worked for was quasi-government, and I was given free rein. I mean, I was it was a commercial portfolio. I was making all sorts of revenue for them, tens of millions of dollars, and I set up systems and practices. But they gave me the opportunity to have parental leave, and because it was quasi-government, they had paid me almost 100% of my salary, which was I made more money staying home because I didn't have to commute. But
wow, yeah, makes sense.
So I took it 36 weeks of basically paid vacation, if you like, right? So, so during that time though, I had that was the awakening. I had time to relax, look at life, travel. And man, did I ever realize, I was like, what am I doing? I'm 3 hours a day and commuting and devoting all this time and attention. I had a boss who'd message me at 3 a.m. and I'd get up in the morning and message him back. And I was on this treadmill of providing results and managing people and all sorts of revenue. And it just seemed, I don't know, it was boring, if you break it right down to the basics. So so I go back to work and I'm thinking, I got to do something. There's got to be something else. So I start searching and I start thinking about, maybe a business or something. And a friend of mine suggested to me that I just, she says, what do you want? I said, I want to be inspired and be with my family two biggest things. And she said, say a prayer. I said, okay, I'll work with you. I did. The next day I get a call from this guy, Ken. It's my friend's father. He tells me about a business opportunity, and all I could think in the back of my mind was, is this the answer to my prayers? Like, this is kind of interesting, intriguing. Yeah. But anyway, I said, okay, you know what? I'll follow. And so I did. And but actually, I should back up a little bit.
Sure.
The catalyst to me doing that was, to taking that step was, I went from this corporate job, which was really comfortable, to getting recruited. I went to another company, smaller company, and I lasted 3 months, and then boom, they killed my income. I got fired, and that was right before Christmas, 2011. Just out of the blue. I didn't even see it coming.
Just curious, almost the most tangential question. I just have to know, but did you include that position on your resume, even though it was 3 months? I know people are asking these questions.
No, I did. Actually, even my profile, I've taken all that stuff off.
Sure.
Yeah. No, well, here's the thing. I did not go back to looking for a position in the corporate world.
Okay.
I never went back, and I never will go back. So,
it makes sense.
Resume didn't even become a question. It was just whether I put it on my profile or not. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, there's no.
I love your LinkedIn profile, by the way. I think it really speaks to your target audience, like especially that summary. I think that summary is fantastic. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I got fired, and then I started searching, and thankfully, I'm really good with money. So I had money. So I said, okay, sure. I'm going to back off and look at life. And, Ken took me on a journey, and I devoted 6 months of my life trying to build a business, which was not a good fit. But guess what? All of that because of a friend giving me a book by Og Mandino, the world's greatest salesman. He wrote The World's Greatest Salesman, but he also wrote the 10 Scrolls. And that's what the book that I got. And it was about doing a practice every day, reading these scrolls 3 times a day, 90 times in a month, 10 months, persistence, right? Implanting little phrases like, I will greet this day with love in my heart. I will multiply my value 100-fold. Like, all those little phrases are stuck because I said them 90 times, right? So, but that led me to look up Og Mandino, which led me to Dave Blanchard. And then guess what? Ken says, come down to Utah for this event. I said, great. I'm heading down there. Dave Blanchard's in Bountiful, Utah. I messaged him, say, can we meet for coffee? He says, come and stay at my house. I said, I'd love to. I'm bringing a friend from Minnesota. He says, bring him along. So
no way. I'm
just like, okay, this is the universe. I think the universe is nudging me and saying, come. So I said, fine. We watched a movie with Nick Nolte. It's a movie about an Olympic athlete, and very inspirational movie. But at the end of the movie, I said, Dave, show me where you do your magic. I watched some of your videos, and I bought 10 of his books that got some coaching with him. And so he showed me, and then he talked with me, and he kind of, I think he got a sense, and he said, Dan, I think you'd make a good coach. And I was like, well, I never thought about that before. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself.
Right.
And, I came back home. A friend of mine tells me about Bob Proctor. She's learning Bob Proctor stuff. And I thought, okay, well, let me check that out because I really want to learn. I want to invest. I want to learn. I want to grow. And so I buy a bunch of his programs. I spend about $7,000 and I learn, I have no income, remember? So I'm like just going out on a limb. And so I start learning Bob's stuff. And she says later on in the conversation, she says, why don't you talk with his team? Maybe, you should talk about coaching. And so I get on the phone with one of his team members and he says, let's get Bob on the phone. Again, I'm just like, all right, sure. Sounds good. I see Bob's all over the internet and he's been on Oprah and so on.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So they said, get him on the phone. So then 2 hours later, they got him on the phone and we had a conversation and he said a few things and that really hit me then. It was like, you know what? I need to do something. He's calling me forward. I know he's telling me.
That's a sign right there. It's like, come on.
I invested $20,000, had no income.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, because I knew I had to do something.
Yeah.
And then, a few months later, Bob, well, he said, get started with me, get started with my team, learn my systems, learn my way of teaching and come and see me. He lives not too far away. He said, come and see me and I'll help you get your business rolling. And he did. He said he'd give us an hour. We were at his house for 3 hours and that started a relationship with Bob, learning his work, what he studied with Napoleon Hill, because he's probably the foremost Napoleon Hill expert other than Napoleon Hill's family or the foundation.
I imagine.
He reads it every day. It's his Bible.
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich is his Bible. So, I made it mine. I read it 60 times. So,
wow. Must have all the chapters memorized and all the names of the chapters and all that kind of stuff. And that's just amazing. And I love hearing the stories of our guests, because I think a lot of the times our listeners need to hear the different paths that all these people are traveling. So in your case, we had a lot of really good themes there. The theme of, going out there, putting yourself out there, networking, and realizing that the best opportunities don't just come through a job posting. I think that's a really big mistake that a lot of people are making. So it's just great to hear your story in particular, and to hear how you arrived at your dream job, essentially. And I think that's a great example. So,
well, you have to say yes. I mean, if you're going to ask for something in this world, you have to learn to say yes, even if it's difficult. And that's where I'm pretty solid. I can just say yes. I've said yes to over 100, maybe $150,000 in educational learning and courses and masterminds, and
sure.
And I keep saying yes. Some of them are $25,000, and I ask the question: is this good for me? Yes. Okay. Go.
Exactly.
Move.
So Dan, can you tell me why you think it's so hard in 2019 and even beyond 2020 to spend our time wisely? I mean, we talk about saying yes, saying no. That's going to be a really big theme, I know, about this podcast. But why do you think it's so hard in modern day time to spend our time wisely?
Well, you know what? I think that our world is just becoming a really competitive place. It's overstimulating.
It is.
I mean, if you look at the stats, marketing was not anywhere near where it is today. And I don't go into the city too often, but when I do, I see all these signs. I'm just like, I feel overwhelmed. I got to stop looking at the side of the road, so it's overstimulating, and, makes concentration so much more difficult, and staying focused. And I'm sort of a scientist, so I look around at the world, and I recognize where, people don't even want to look at you in the face anymore, because it's like they're thinking, what are you going to ask me? What do you want? Are you going to disturb me? I just need some peace and quiet,
Yeah. I feel like I'm almost competing with people's phones actually for attention, like half the time, because it seems to be where everyone's buried. I had a conversation actually with someone who we did like a rejection challenge, where it was almost like approaching, a bunch of strangers with, questions, like these ridiculous questions. And this one lady in particular said she had a hard time doing that, just because she felt like everyone's heads were in their phones the entire time. That's why I almost wish we could go back to the 90s, like not have to experience that kind of thing. Everyone, like, what did you do back in the 90s? Where just stare at the wall or something,
Yeah.
So,
there's a movie that my kids watch, and I really got it. There's a movie called WALL-E, and that movie had people staring basically at iPads, not communicating visually and face to face, but talking through electronics. And that was about 5-6 years ago. And man, we are living it. I can see it now. It's scary in a way.
Scary, man.
Like, we can't even talk to each other anymore. Like, why?
And so you think that's like the big distractor? That's what's taking people. That's what's a big time suck for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's it's not only the electronics, but it's the the psychological aspects.
Sure.
We're looking for a dopamine charge.
Sure.
Every time we, and it's like, what can we look at? What's going to excite me? What's going to entertain me? If I could pinpoint the primary problem today, I think it's boredom.
Sure.
I think people are bored, and it's odd that we're bored because we're so busy, but yet we're distracted, and yet we're bored, and we're looking for entertainment all at once, which is a bit confusing. It's like oil and water trying to mix, right? It just doesn't make any sense. But here we are, right? Trying to move through life, do our best, enjoy ourselves, and do it without too much confusion. But there's so much confusion coming at us. So it's like, how do we shut that down? And I said, at the beginning, saying yes got me to where I am, but now I have to say no.
Say no.
We have to learn to say no. That's a boundary. And if we don't create that boundary, then what are we doing? We're on Facebook. We're looking at other people's stuff and commenting on it and so on, absorbed in that. And that's a time suck.
Okay.
It can be valuable sometimes, but it's not valuable daily.
It's something I had to do, and I don't know if I've told anyone else on this podcast this, but maybe it'll help someone. The iPhone, I forgot what update it was, but made it to where you can put a lockdown on your apps after a certain time. And the key is you can't know the password and put a lockdown on yourself. Like, you have to give, what I did is I gave my brother the passcode to my phone so he can set what apps I have available. And I don't find myself with a particular addictive personality, someone who's always on these apps or anything, but I do find myself just constantly having this draw just to go on Facebook, to go scroll, to go on Instagram, even the most random apps, not Uber, I don't know, like the ones that are constantly about giving you those dopamine rushes, essentially. So I think you're spot on that's exactly what a problem is with society today. A lot of us are finding ourselves with very little time.
Mm-hmm. So, and to add to what you were just saying, what I've done is I've taken every single notification-based application, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, any of those, I put them all into one folder, including email. Okay. So if I open my phone, I only see one red dot. And there's no dings, no notifications, no nothing. All I get is text messages and phone calls. And I basically shut all of that down so that I don't get distracted. I can stay focused. And then I actually select times of the day when I'm going to go in and look at those things and use them.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So,
that's awesome.
It's practice. It's practice. You can't just, say you're going to do it and then, willy-nilly. You have to say, I'm going to do this and then get going on it and track it and see how you did for the.
Yeah. And we're not telling everyone here to like delete and never go on these social media apps. In fact, I think they have a lot of utility, a lot of purpose. There are a lot of events I actually would not go to if I didn't see them posted on Facebook events or things like that. So I actually use Facebook for the social aspect, but like time it, be cognizant of your time, like set a timer on your phone for how long you're going to be on Facebook. And I think you'll be surprised by how quickly that time runs out. So.
Yeah, and it's about prioritization, because if you don't prioritize and put other things first, then you find yourself on Facebook. It's like video games. Years ago, I sat down to play a video game. It was late at night, 11 o'clock. Next time I looked up the clock, it was 7 a.m. I was like,
what? I got to go to work.
I didn't even know 8 hours just blew by.
That's great.
I didn't even drink anything.
Talk about a time warp black hole suck. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So like, are you saying is this what you'd say is the biggest mistake people are making with their time, or is there something else that we're missing here?
Well, I think it's because of the distraction. I think we're just allowing it in. We've made it kind of a new normal, and we haven't set boundaries on what is priority for us and what what matters. So it's like if we're just standing around someplace in line waiting for something, you see it all the time. Or if I go to swimming lessons or something, and I see everybody. I actually ask my kids, I say, count everybody in here as we're walking by. How many people are on phones?
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Everybody. And they're all just sitting there. So it's like if they got nothing to do, they're on their device. And that's become sort of normal. And that's a distraction. If that's normal, then, what's priority? Do we even know what we're doing, where we're going, what matters? I don't think people have made that distinction as to what really matters in their life versus, what they're investing in. I mean, I call it a mental currency. I mean, if you're investing your thoughts in something, it's going to produce some sort of outcome. So, why sit there and look at other people's information? It's like watching television. I just stopped watching television. That's just me. But watching television is an investment in other people. I've actually said to my kids, I said, we're watching that movie, with Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter. And I said, do you know how much he's worth? No, $110 million. And you just invested in him again.
Yeah.
So you're not living your life, but he is. So you're watching him.
And thank you for alluding to that. And you'll see me constantly posting on LinkedIn and Facebook and things like that. But my intent is never to distract people. It's always to offer value and things like that. And I think what we're doing here is really good by bringing people's consciousness to it. But there's something really good I think you alluded to, and I've heard this on another podcast. This actually was the Model Health Show. When you're spending your time on Facebook or looking at something kind of like meaningless, you're not just spending the time itself, but you're spending your energy. Like, I believe you have a finite amount of energy in a given moment, and what you're doing is you're giving that resource to something, and it has to come from somewhere. It's like that attention switching that comes from it. So for me, I think that's one of the biggest things, that it not only sucks time, but it sucks energy, which energy is very related, I think, to how well your time is spent.
Well, and I think energy is willpower. And we have limited willpower. There's a ton of research on this. And we start off with all the willpower in the world at the beginning of the day. By the end of the day, we're just like, oh man, I gotta sit on the couch and surf television.
That's how I feel. No, seriously, that's exactly how I feel. Like at 7 o'clock sometimes, it's just like this drain. But yeah, it's limited, and like, heck, let's move away from all that sucking.
So the core thing that we're talking about here, which is that, if we're not, like, most people don't recognize how they feel on a daily basis. So I think it's critical that we recognize that first. And even at the end of each day, if just a little journal or something, or if you want to use an app, I use Habit Bull. I mean, if you want to, you put it on there, feel good today, and you just click a yes or no at the end of the day. It's a way to track and see how you're feeling. And if you're not finding yourself feeling good and looking forward to the weekend all the time, or looking forward to eating food or a meal or a restaurant, or those are not, it's not going to satisfy you. And that's a critical distinction as to, are you living a life that's fulfilling? If not, then it's about, okay, well, what am I doing that I should stop doing and say no to? Because if I don't, I'll stay on this path, I'll be distracted, I'll be busy, and I won't start doing the things that matter. Because how can you squeeze anything else in if there's no time?
And that's exactly what I want to talk. I feel like we're moving kind of into the core topic here, which is like, what are the steps I need to take if I have this goal and I want to accomplish it in less time? And is that what you're saying? It's like we need to find out the number of things that we need to stop doing? Or what if I'm trying to take that first step to start giving myself more time back?
Well, exactly. That's what I did in the beginning, and this is what I'm teaching here, is that we need to get a list of all the things we're doing, all the biggest things that we're doing. And we have to be honest. I mean, if we're surfing, our phone tells us now. We have, iPhone tells you how much time you've been on it. So, so you can see where you're investing your time and energy and effort and willpower. And so make a list, and then you might sit on it for a while, or if you're really proactive and you just want to go at it right away and say, okay, well, what are these things are really not that valuable, that are not really that satisfying, and start striking things off. And that's a stop doing list. I mean, you could call it an avoided all cost list, if you like.
Yes.
And you're going to have that list someplace, because you'll immediately forget about it.
Yes.
Unless you're really, really persistent and aware. But, you make the list, and you basically start striking off things like, these are just time consumers, these are time suckers, time wasters, and I don't really feel that great after using them. I don't feel, that I'm moving through life and feeling good and living a life of my dreams, let's say. And I wrote a book called Living the Life of Your Dreams, which talks about that, about how you program your life backwards, from death backwards. Right. So, but the idea is this: if you don't create a stop doing list and don't make space, then there's no way you can start doing things and start moving towards the life that you want to live.
I think one thing you did in your article that actually was great was you gave a list of examples of things in your business that you wanted to stop doing. So I don't know if you wanted to enlighten us with a few of those examples, just because I thought they were great.
Well, sure. I mean, one of the things I learned in being in business many years is to stop working with startups, for me, because that's just not where I'm at in my business. Like, I can,
right. It's not your target.
I can work with people who are scaling their business and taking to the next level. And, that's what I did in corporate. I mean, I would go in and I'd revamp things and get databases installed and so on. And that was just my my objective perspective. I think I have a really strong one, and I can decide what's, what is a good move or not. That's one of the things I stopped doing. One of the things I alluded to earlier was, the stopping of the notifications and so on my phone. I mean, I had it happening for a while, but then I had to, realize, okay, how do you manage this? So,
sure.
Yeah. So, I think the key is to stop investing energy and time and effort into things that are not going to move the needle on your business. And so you can be very scattered very easily, and that's not effective. So I researched and studied and studied book the 12-week year and other practices, and really got dialed into, what are my priorities? What is my focus? I need to make space for the things that matter to me. And, so even other things, I just stopped, working all the time, and actually schedule time, free time, space with my family, time and space with my family, put it in my calendar. Even if I don't know for sure, I just put it there. and block it, and that's it. And then
That's fantastic. I think one I really struggle with personally are emails, and I just because I've been getting so many of them and they come at random times. So one thing that I did, and I want to get your opinion on this. I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do, but I blocked out chunked a time in the morning to devote just to emails, and just like I'm just devoted to just busting them out. All the ones I received for the last 24 hours, as opposed to just receiving them and responding to them. And I know some professionals are listening to this being like, I have to respond to emails as soon as they get there. But is that really the truth, or does it depend on your position?
I think it's a matter of perspective. I'll talk about a client that I had, which is a mortgage broker. And he says that he needs to respond immediately. Otherwise something can go sideways or something. Okay. But I did say to him, I said, could something wait 30 minutes? Could it wait 45 minutes? Really is that critical that it needs to be responded to immediately? Or can you actually train your clients to indicate which things are urgent, or the bank or whomever you're communicating with, so that you're not constantly checking every single message? Because it's like changing channels. Your mind is on one track, on one channel. You're looking at something, you're focusing on it, you're using that willpower that you have, and next you change. And then you go do something else. Then you switch back. And every time you switch back and forth, willpower goes down.
That's it. It goes back to the attention switching. Yeah. Sometimes I love emails, but sometimes it's like the worst part of my day. I'm like, I would rather be podcasting or even editing the podcast. But
to your point, dedicating that time, yes, I absolutely agree. Maybe twice a day, morning, afternoon.
Got it.
That's it. And if you have to train people in terms of how you respond, and I do, if it's a voice message, it'll say directly on there, I check my messages twice a day, these times. If this is urgent, text me. Now they have to make a decision, a cognitive decision. Is this urgent? Because if they message me something,
that's a judgment call right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's like a train crashing or something obviously that's urgent, versus, I have people ask me to review their resume all the time. And, sometimes I can see that being urgent. For the most part, it's not very urgent, even though I want to respond to it quickly. You're right. It's just a judgment call.
So that's one of the boundaries, and that's about to stop doing and avoid at all costs, is not to respond immediately to other people, because basically we have an agreement with them after a while that we will respond immediately to their requests, and they get accustomed to that, and then they expect it, and then when you don't, things break down.
Right. And I want to delve into this next question here, because I know it's something that a lot of us, even we can have all the willpower in the world, but saying no has to be one of the toughest things for us. I know it is for me, or historically it's been for me, because, like you, I love saying yes to all those opportunities, but I don't think you're trying to highlight here, say yes to every possible thing. I think you're trying to highlight, say yes to the things that are going to propel you forward in your career, like saying yes to those types of opportunities and being cognizant of those. I mean, just as much as I do that saying no is a really important skill to have. But for those people who don't yet have that skill, how would you say, what's that first step to start exercising it?
Just test it, use it, try it today, even if it feels really uncomfortable. And I'm saying say no.
It is.
Without a reason, without a reason, just no. No. And I do it once in a while, especially if something comes across my plate, and sometimes I might, put a little bit of language just to justify it. I'll say, this sounds like it's all about you and nothing to do with me. So no. That's
you're selfish. Yeah.
Right? Well, yeah, but selfish in a good way. It's like, what?
Yeah.
I don't have the time to invest in what you're talking about or offering. And
exactly.
But it's a boundary. And again, it's the question of, if I say yes to this, it's an investment of my time, energy, and effort. And is it going to move the needle in my life, in my business? I measure my life based on my relationships, my health, and my career. And if it doesn't move the needle on each one of those things and on specific areas, then I just say no. And that's the way I handle it. But yeah, just getting in the practice of saying no without even a reason. If somebody comes along and says, think about it. If somebody came along on the street and said to you, they handed you a flyer and said, hey, got this great deal, $29.95. It's great. It's only here right now, cash only. You say no in a second.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
because you don't know them. but when it's people you do know, you feel a little more compelled to say yes, or you start wondering, is this a good move or not? I mean, if you know your priorities and you look, let's say you're sitting at your desk and you look at your priorities and you say, okay, these are my priorities. This is the question coming across. This is the request. Does it fit in any of these categories? No. Okay, that's a no. Sometimes it's not even a response. No, it's just delete.
And so, like, I think it was 2 episodes. I brought on Alex Grodnick, and it was almost like it was like the opposite of this. It's like we had to go out and practice receiving no's. So I know a lot of job seekers are afraid of that rejection. It does go the exact opposite way. We have to go out and practice giving those no's just as much. And the thing that we called it during the episode, and I think this already was a term, but it was rejection therapy, which basically highlights the fact that the best way to actually do something and actually get that skill is to expose yourself to it in a way that exposure therapy would do the same thing. So I don't think that this is something that you can just hear in a podcast and be like, okay, that's great, I have that skill now. It's like, no, this is something that you have to hear from this podcast and go out and practice like this week. So
put it in an application. I mean, like you were saying, it becomes a mental muscle.
Yes.
Be able to say no as easy as you say yes. And it seems like, I don't know, I think North America is all on this yes path, which is yes. We seem to be saying yes to almost everything. And we've got to start saying no because we don't have space. I mean, there's something called, it's called the vacuum law of prosperity, but just take the idea of the vacuum. A vacuum only has so much space. And if you don't make space, then you cannot possibly fit anything else in. So if your closet is full of clothes and you're saying, I want some new clothes, well, then you better get rid of some old stuff or else things are going to stack up and look really messy. So you get rid of some old, you make space for new. It's the same thing with the mind, same thing with our lives. And we have to start somewhere. So, these little no's can start building up. And I look at it this way. I actually meet people all the time and, they might be curious about what I do and how I can help them and so on. But I'm actually looking for ways to say no. I'm looking for ways to disqualify them first instead of saying yes, because I really want to know that they're actually going to do the work that is required to get this test, because it gives me a testimonial and a recommendation, which is the only thing I really care about.
Good. So, raising your standards, I'm sure, like in a very good way. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Dan, perfect. I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about how we can find out more about this topic, just because I think it's interesting. I know you have a great resource. It's the article. But first, if you can give one piece of advice to every business owner or job seeker on what they should do to be successful, what would that be?
It's on the topic that we're talking about. I think we need to have real clarity on what we're doing, where we're going. And I alluded to earlier, I wrote a book. It's more like a guide, but I just felt compelled to write it because it's like, the world is suffering. So this book is called Living Life Your Dreams, and it's all about stopping, the insanity. It's how to stop working insane hours and start living an awesome life. That's the subtitle. And so, it's about living your life backwards. So you basically say, if I was to be remembered by my family, my friends, my colleagues, the most important people in my life, what would that look like? And that gets us really clear on where we're going. And that way we can actually, go back in time from the end, which is our death. This is born from the E-Myth. That's where I got this concept from. But I applied my own principles, which is faith, family, friends, fitness, and finances in that order. If you like, a value system.
I actually love that. Those categories speak to me like no other. So thank you.
But the only problem is I say in that order. So it's like put finances at the end. And we know what everybody's doing. They're going after money. And so anyway, that's another topic. But the idea is this: not to be living our life willy-nilly, just going through the motions and letting things happen, taking more of a responsibility position and saying, okay, this is how I want to live my life, and then measuring it. Like every week, check in. How did I move the needle on how I want to be remembered by my friends or my family or my colleagues or my followers or my clients? How do I want to be remembered? And then taking note of that. And guess what? That's tracking metrics. And you know how that works. I mean, sports works on metrics, right? I mean, if we didn't keep track of score, who'd be playing in the NBA playoffs now? The Raptors.
By the way, it's very unrelated, but I don't want anyone to hate me, but I'm going for the Toronto Raptors. I am going win that championship. And that's because Kawhi was a San Antonio Spur, and so same with Danny Green. But I want to see the Warriors lose.
I'm really impartial, but it is kind of fun to watch. A little. But so the point is this, keeping score. So if we keep score of where we're going in our life, then we won't get to the end. Because you know what? The number one regret for people in hospice is that they did not take the risks and do the things they wanted to do. That's out of the 5 top things, they did not do that. And why? Because they didn't even have a target. And so that's why I'm saying have a target, know how you want to be remembered. And that gets you thinking, how am I going to act? What am I going to do? What am I going to invest my mental currency, my time, my energy, my effort into? And then it doesn't become like I have unlimited time. It's like, I don't know how much time I have.
Right.
So that's a prioritization. And then, of course, it comes back to having boundaries. And you start establishing boundaries that are going to move you towards this end goal of, yeah, I got to the end of my life. I feel good. I did everything I needed to that I thought I should. And I'm being remembered by these people. My legacy is going to outlive me.
Well, Dan LeFave, you've been an excellent guest and such a great way to put a cap on it. That was my favorite part of the podcast. I'm going to repeat it, I know myself, when I'm listening to it in the editing process. So can't thank you enough for joining us here on the Career Warrior podcast. So I got to ask, how can people find out more about you? And I know we talked about that link to the article you talked about, but how do we find out more about you essentially?
Well, that's the greatest gift that I can give. And it's, they can look more at my website. You can see more about my website when you go there. But the article is at danlefave.com/save time now. And, that alone, I think, is going to be an asset that if you print that off and you start putting those 7 principles or seven habits to save time, and it's how to succeed in half the time so that you can take your business to the next level. And even beyond that is how to have precious moments with your family, because that's really important to me. If you don't have family, you don't have like children and so on, or a wife, or a spouse, the point is this: you want to you want to have precious moments to look back on, because most people look forward in life, but at some point they start looking back, and they want to. If you don't have memories to look back upon, that's going to be a tough nail to bite. It's going to be, you're going to feel dissatisfied, and then you're going to go buy a motorbike and a boat. You know how that works.
Yeah.
But, to try to fill that void, but you can build your life. You can design it. I say life is not happening to you. It's responding to you. And if life is responding, then let's go and make it happen.
Let's do it.
People out there to follow. Let's just go and do a little bit of practice, follow what they're doing, taking charge. And it doesn't take much, but it takes a little bit of motivation and a little bit of practice. And once you get into motion, it becomes habit. And then, man, you've got willpower. Then you've got more time. You bought yourself some willpower, right?
And one of the perks of being the host of this podcast is I feel inspired every time I walk out of these podcasts. So you've been amazing, man. I'm going to go, I want to actually start practicing, because I need to journal and be more cognizant of these things and goal setting, a lot more often than I do. But this week I'm going to take the initiative myself. And so Dan actually mentioned a link to that where you can go and download that. So what I'll do is I will go ahead and drop that in the description. So don't feel like you have to memorize it or anything, or if you're driving or anything like that, you can come back to it on the description link there. So fantastic. And also mention that you can follow Dan on LinkedIn too. I know you have a fantastic following and you're always, posting. And so if you want to keep up with Dan and seeing what he's up to, he's Dan LeFave. That's DANLEFAVE. All right. So this concludes the 47th episode of the Career Warrior podcast. So many good key takeaways here. And I want to assign every single person out there listening to this podcast to say no to something that is not going to further their career in some sort of way. I'm not saying to go out there and be very, Machiavellian and say no to everything that doesn't, please you. But there are things, I promise you, that you should be saying no to that you don't. So find that one thing this week and go out and say no to somebody. So the rejection therapy almost for saying no. All right, Warriors, you have been tasked. And this concludes the episode, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. And for more on your job search, make sure to check out letseatgrandma.com. That's where you can find our blog, where we post the podcast show notes and so many more articles that will help you in your job search. You can also check out our resume services if you are interested in getting your resume professionally reworked. And please make sure to show us some love by jumping onto iTunes and leaving us a rating. The support from my fellow warriors will show the world how great this podcast is and help other people in their job search. Pay it forward. Thanks, guys, for being true warriors, and thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next week.